Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in life when the world's noise becomes too loud, when the opinions of others start to weigh heavier than your own heart, and when the reflection in the mirror stops looking like your future. That's the moment. That's the turning point. That's when you must decide, not just to step back, but to disappear. I'm not talking about running away from responsibility. I'm talking about stepping away from the noise, the patterns, the habits, the environments that no longer serve who you're becoming. Sometimes you must go quiet to grow. Sometimes you must leave the room to find your own voice. Sometimes you must shed the version of you that people are familiar with, so the version you're destined to be can rise. This is not about hiding, it's about rebuilding. It's about walking away from the expectations and limitations that people glued onto your name and writing a brand new script. You see, disappearing is not weakness, it's strategy. It's going off the grid to level up. It's turning down the volume on the world so you can turn up the volume on your soul. When you return, you're not the same. You're stronger, sharper, unrecognizable. Because you didn't just disappear, you evolved. So step back, go quiet, disappear from the distractions. And when you return, let them meet the new you. Because change doesn't happen in the spotlight. Change happens in the shadows. There comes a moment in every journey when the air feels different. When the things that once excited you no longer move your spirit. When the same routines begin to feel like chains instead of comfort. That's your turning point. That's the whisper of change calling your name, but most people ignore it. They keep walking the same path because it's familiar. They convince themselves that comfort means safety. But comfort is often the slow death of purpose. Recognizing the turning point means being honest with yourself. It means asking the hard questions. Am I growing or just going in circles? Am I evolving or simply existing? You see, change doesn't always announce itself with a shout. Sometimes it comes as a quiet pull in your chest, a subtle restlessness that tells you there's more. And when that feeling arrives, don't silence it. Listen, step back. Stepping back is not quitting, it's recalibrating. It's about pausing long enough to see what no longer fits. To realize that certain patterns, certain people, and certain habits were meant for a version of you that no longer exists. When you recognize the turning point, you reclaim your power to redirect your life. That's where transformation begins, not in motion, but in awareness. The world today is loud. Everyone has something to say about who you should be, what you should do, and how you should live. Voices echo from every direction: friends, strangers, screens, and fears. And in that storm of noise, your own voice gets buried. Silencing the noise doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world. This means reclaiming your peace from it. It means turning down the volume on distractions so you can finally hear the rhythm of your own soul. Not every opinion deserves a seat in your mind. Not every piece of advice is meant for your path. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand you. Distractions disguise themselves as comfort. Endless scrolling, empty conversations, chasing validation, they all steal the energy you need for growth. When you silence the noise, you take that power back. There is strength in stillness. There is clarity in quiet. When the outside world fades, the inside world begins to speak. Start to notice your thoughts again, your dreams again, your purpose again. The truth is, you can't rebuild yourself while surrounded by chaos. You must clear the space. Let silence become your sanctuary, because only in silence does the next version of you begin to rise. There will come a time when you need to step back, not because you've lost, not because you've failed, but because your spirit needs room to breathe again. Stepping away is not surrender, it's wisdom. It's knowing when to stop pouring from an empty cup. It's realizing that sometimes the greatest progress comes in moments of stillness and solitude. But the world will tell you otherwise. They'll say you're giving up. They'll whisper that you've changed, as if change isn't the whole point of life. Don't let shame chain you to exhaustion. Don't let pride keep you in places where your peace is constantly sacrificed. It's okay to go quiet. It's okay to disappear for a while. You're not hiding, you're healing. You're not quitting, you're recalibrating. Preparing to return with more strength, more clarity, more direction. Every great transformation needs a pause. A caterpillar doesn't apologize for its cocoon. It disappears to evolve. And when it emerges, it doesn't look back for approval. So take your pause without guilt. Step away without shame. You don't owe explanations for your growth, because sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from the noise. So you can walk back toward your purpose with silence as your strength and solitude as your teacher. We spend so much of our lives wearing names that were never truly ours. The smart one, the quiet one, the strong one, the reliable one. Labels that once gave us meaning begin to turn into cages. People see us through the lens of who we were, not who we're becoming. And without realizing it, we start performing versions of ourselves just to keep their comfort intact. But growth demands that we let those old identities go, because you can't step into your future while dragging the weight of who you used to be. Detaching from old identities isn't about rejecting your past. It's about releasing the limits that came with it. It's about saying, I'm more than the role I once played. Sometimes that means disappointing people who only loved the version of you that made them feel secure, and that's okay. You weren't born to live inside someone else's expectations. When you strip away the labels, you meet yourself again, raw, real, unfiltered. You rediscover the parts of you that were silenced, the dreams that were paused, the fire that was dimmed just to fit in. Letting go is not loss, it's rebirth. It's the freedom to evolve, to rewrite your story without permission. Because the moment you detach from who they said you were, you begin to become who you were always meant to be. Growth doesn't happen under a spotlight. It happens in quiet corners, in the moments no one sees, in the spaces where you are free to stumble, to fail, to begin again. You can't transform when every move is being watched. You can't evolve when you're constantly trying to prove yourself to people who don't even understand your journey. To create space for growth, you must step away from the stage. You must give yourself permission to be unseen for a while, because the world loves to comment on your process but rarely understands your purpose. Growth requires privacy, requires patience. It requires silence strong enough to hold your uncertainty. When you're always being judged, you start performing instead of progressing. You start living for approval instead of alignment. But transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs intention. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to close the door, turn off the noise, and give yourself space to rebuild without explanation. That's where the real work begins. In the shadows of solitude. In the conversations you have with yourself, and the choices no one claps for. Create space where you can fail and rise freely, where you can make mistakes without fear, because only in that sacred, quiet space does the next version of you begin to take shape. Not for applause, but for truth. There is a kind of wisdom that only whispers. It doesn't shout. It doesn't fight for attention. It waits patiently beneath the noise of the world. You can only hear it when you go quiet. Because self-discovery isn't found in constant motion, or in endless conversations, or in the noise of proving your worth to others. It's found in silence. In the stillness between your thoughts, in those moments when the world fades and it's just you, your breath, and your truth. Going quiet is not about isolation. It's about tuning back into the frequency of your own soul. It's about hearing the voice you've ignored because everyone else's opinions were louder. In silence, clarity begins to surface. You start to see what really matters and what was never yours to carry. You begin to understand what you want, not what you were told to want. The world teaches you to speak, to chase, to prove, but silence teaches you to listen, to align, to become. When you go quiet, you meet yourself again. You meet the dreamer, the creator, the believer that lives beneath the noise. In that meeting, that sacred reconnection is where transformation begins. So dare to step into silence. Dare to turn the world down until your inner voice becomes the loudest sound you know. The world loves to celebrate the moment you rise, but it rarely honors the nights you spent rebuilding yourself in silence. True change doesn't happen under the spotlight. It happens in the dark, when no one is watching, when no one is clapping. When the only voice you have left is your own, the dark is not your enemy. It's your workshop. It's where you break apart the pieces of who you were and start shaping who you're meant to be. In the dark, there are no performances, no expectations, no audience to please. Just truth, raw and unfiltered. That's where strength is born, in the quiet hours of reflection, in the struggle no one sees, in the discipline that asks for no recognition. You learn to face your fears. You learn to forgive yourself. Learn to start again, slowly, steadily, deliberately. And while the world is distracted by noise, you're in the shadows, sharpening your purpose, building a foundation so strong it can't be shaken. When you finally step back into the light, you won't need to announce your return. Your presence will speak for you. Because the dark didn't break you, it rebuilt you. Every transformation begins unseen. Every masterpiece is created long before the curtain rises. That's the power of rebuilding in the dark. When you step away from the noise, don't just rest, rebuild. That's the time to turn inward, to do the quiet, unseen work that shapes everything about who you'll become. Focusing on inner work means facing yourself with honesty. It means asking what you really believe, what you really want, and what still holds you back. It's not about fixing what's broken, it's about strengthening what's already within you. Your mindset, your discipline, your faith, your resilience, these are the muscles that carry you through the storms of life. Invest in your skills, learn, grow. Stretch your mind beyond the limits others placed on you. Because when the opportunity comes, it won't wait for you to prepare. You must already be ready. Invest in your mindset. Train your thoughts to see possibility where others see doubt. Replace comparison with confidence. Replace fear with faith. Most of all, invest in your self-worth. Remind yourself that you are not defined by your mistakes, nor by how others measure your value. You are defined by the courage to keep becoming. Inner work isn't glamorous, doesn't get applause, but it builds a foundation that never cracks. It turns silence into strength, and solitude into self-mastery. Because when you rise again, you won't rise by chance, you'll rise by the work you did when no one was watching. When you return, you won't be the same. You'll carry a different kind of strength. Quiet, steady, and unshakable. Because transformation doesn't just change how you look, it changes how you see. It changes how you move, how you speak, how you choose what deserves your energy. The version of you that left was searching. The one that returns has found something deeper, purpose, peace, clarity. You'll walk with the confidence of someone who's faced the storm and learned how to dance in the rain instead of running from it. People might not recognize you, and that's exactly how it should be. They'll look for the old you, the one who needed approval, who doubted their worth, who settled for less. But that person is gone. You've outgrown the noise. You've outgrown the chaos. You've outgrown the smallness that once felt safe. Now, your silence carries power. Your presence commands respect. Your energy speaks before you do. Returning transformed means you've met yourself in the dark and chosen not to stay there. You've faced your flaws, your fears, your failures, and turned them into fuel. You're no longer driven by proving, you're guided by purpose. And when you step back into the world, you'll move differently. Not louder, but deeper. Because the goal was never to come back the same. The goal was to return transformed, stronger, wiser, and beautifully unrecognizable to your old self. There comes a point when you must stop shrinking to fit the memory of who you were. You've grown, you've evolved, and you've earned every part of your transformation. So stop apologizing for it. Stop explaining it to people who only knew the old version of you. Own your new identity with quiet power. You didn't come this far to hide behind humility that silences your truth. You came this far to stand tall in the person you've become. Some will say you've changed, and they're right. You were meant to. Change is the evidence of life. Change is the reward for growth. You cannot keep carrying the old you into new seasons. Owning your new identity means honoring the lessons that shaped you. It means embracing the strength you built in silence and the wisdom you earned through pain. You no longer need validation to know your value. You no longer need permission to take up space. Stand in who you are now. Speak from the authority of your journey. Walk with the confidence of someone who has seen the dark and decided to bring back their own light. You are not obligated to be who you once were. You are allowed to outgrow everything that no longer fits your spirit. So stand in your truth unapologetically. Because owning your new identity isn't arrogance. It's the highest form of self-respect. So when the world finally sees you again, don't explain where you've been. Don't justify the silence, the distance, or the change. Simply stand there, calm, grounded, unshaken, and let your presence tell the story. Because disappearing was never about escape. It was about evolution. It was about finding the courage to break apart so you could come back whole. Every step away was a step toward yourself. Every quiet moment was a conversation with your destiny. And now you've returned, not to prove anything, but to live as proof that transformation is real. You disappeared not to vanish, but to become. To rebuild, to remember, to rise. So walk forward with grace, wear your growth like armor, and let the world meet the new you, the one born from silence. Forged in solitude, and ready to shine without fear, because you didn't just change. You came home to the strongest, truest version of yourself.